Today, Kelsey and I are going to talk to you about our professional experiences during this pandemic. You may be wondering why Beaker is here. I put Beaker up here to represent how we all felt in January and February, and probably how some of you are still feeling as this disease began spreading. It was early on in the year, so we were just beginning to realize how serious this was. To be honest, I don't think at that time in March we were able to really wrap our brains around it. But we quickly had to pivot from our normal day-to-day tasks at Mapbox to assembling an internal team that was charged with deciding how we, as a mapping company, were going to address this pandemic. No one at the company took on this task lightly, because as map makers or map enthusiasts, we know how powerful and impactful these tools can be. And I'm not saying that because I feel self-important in what we do at Mapbox. I say that because of things like this bullet point that you see on the screen right now. During the height of the pandemic, just one of our customers reported that they saw over 50 million map loads in a week. That's just one of the thousands of COVID maps that you all were seeing. And that quote from them alone really stunned me and underscored what we already knew. And excuse me while I quote Batman here, but with great power comes great responsibility. And I say that because as the pandemic spread, we began to see maps become the central visualization of every COVID-related news report, every grassroots website that was popping up, every government briefing, at the top of every WHO situation report. And along with that, we started to see an alarming trend. Next slide, yeah. This is our maps mashup. In the beginning, we saw maps coming in from every direction. To date, we've spotted over 241 Mapbox COVID-related maps, just Mapbox alone. And we've directly supported or provided discounts for 103 of these. The trend that we began seeing in March and April were a series of maps that were uninformative, to say the least, and fear-inducing. Yet they were being viewed by millions of people every day. We've all seen these maps. I think the most emblematic of this era is probably the bottom corner here, which I dubbed the Acne Map. The world is just covered in large red dots. You aren't sure what the size of these circles mean or if the whole world is currently infected. If the goal is to use these data visualizations to inform, then we felt like they were failing. So we decided to start digging into the design choices of these map makers. And what we found was a mentality like the quote you see on the screen. Our original intention was to use red, the color we use anytime a situation is serious, severe, or needs attention immediately. Our central thesis was that this pandemic is serious. When every country in the world is impacted, using blood red on your map isn't going to drive that point home, and instead can decrease comprehension and actually increase fear. So, as we continue to see maps like this, we decided not to just let the world burn, but we decided to address these issues head on, to wade into the chaos by providing design guidance and consultations. And with that, I'll let Kelsey walk you through what that process looks like.
Thanks, Megan. Of the 200 plus pandemic-related maps out there that were built with Mapbox, we provided design consultation for around 24. After the first handful, I found I was providing the same pieces of advice over and over. In a very stressful, busy time when you can't run through every detail with a customer, we put together a set of guidelines to help our customers better understand the biggest pitfalls when it comes to data visualization with maps. Our guide includes 7 tips in total, but I'll quickly run through 4 that we covered right now. Choropleth maps have been a very common visualization type during the pandemic, which comes as no surprise. Colorblind, unfriendly palettes are still a big problem within the cartography community, so it's also not a big surprise that people who make maps but maybe don't consider themselves cartographers don't really think about these things either. Showing, in this case, proved much better than telling in terms of persuading customers to move away from red to green palettes. The instinct to show raw counts per country, state, or county is really strong for most people. It takes some persuading to move away from a visual that feels so commonplace. Not to mention the fact that data came in very unstable and inconsistent formats in the early days of the pandemic. Computing cases by population requires data joins and math and complicated legends and explanations, whereas cases alone is pretty digestible for the layperson. It takes some work to understand why this isn't right, but and especially with web maps where you have a Mercator projection, but it's worth doing the work to get there. This one might be the most Mapbox specific of all of the examples I'm going to talk about today, but especially because you can zoom in and out with just the scroll wheel on your mouse to any zoom level on the map. And I think this is maybe one of the more important ones, but you should really design for all of the zoom levels on your map. In this example, the map at the top is designed at a global scale and looks okay. Like China might be a little out of proportion here, but this is really like a user experience question. Think about every zoom level that your user will look at when they zoom in and out of your map. It looks okay at the global scale, but you zoom into the US in the bottom left-hand corner, can't really get anything out of this map. And so you should design for all zoom levels. This is actually really easy to do in Mapbox Studio and Mapbox GLJS. And if you don't know how to do this, please ask us, we can help you with that. And then the last and probably most common piece of advice that we gave during design reviews was to edit what you have on your map to tell a single story. This is such a common problem. You see so many dashboards and maps that have just so much information. So often we have interesting or detailed data and want the world to see every cut of it, but a successful cartographer or designer knows how to edit. This example on the left is my attempt to illustrate something that has just too much going on at once. There should be a pretty clear narrative that is apparent immediately when you look at a map or a data viz. More detailed explanations of all of these are available on our blog. You see it's linked here below. And we have the other 3 examples that we provided for our customers that are available there. We also wanted to show you a case study of a customer where we pick and choose our battles a little bit. On the left here is the customer's initial coronavirus map built with Mapbox before they sought design advice from our team. Stood up pretty quickly, they were aware it needed some help. I believe this map is showing case count by state, and it was up for a week or maybe even a few days before they came to us and asked for help. They wanted to show more data with this map. They wanted to show cases, recovered counts, and deaths per state and then per county as they zoomed in, which in my opinion is a serious improvement over what they had initially. They wanted this all to happen in like 2 days. And then they also wanted to fully redesign the base map using Mapbox. We suggested some nicer color palettes than what they had initially, all of which were colorblind friendly and were like a little nicer on the eyes than this like beige to red that they had going on. And then we eventually compromised and settled on what they had there on the right. And this is the state of the live maps now on their website. They have this case count here on the left where the red is going strong, redder than ever, in some part because of the color palette and in some part because of the data that underlies it. You have this death count map, which has this ominous color palette. And then we have a rate map, which is great. We have cases per 1,000 people using this purple color palette. So this is a good example of, we didn't win every but conversation that we had with the customer, but baby steps, we're making progress. It's a conversation, it's all about compromise and getting to like a good medium at the end of the day. We also made some progress with customers who are community partners who may not necessarily use Mapbox products for all of their needs. We worked with the World Health Organization for some of their products. These maps you see here are their situation report maps that they use in like these PDFs that they create to communicate like the state of the pandemic. This map here on the left, I believe is from March 11th, and the one here on the right is from October 11th. They're quite different, and the difference is because of some design feedback that we provided, which they then incorporated into their into like a standardized document that's part of their internal guidance that they use at the WHO. So when you give this kind of guidance, some customers or partners are not necessarily receptive, and then some are really receptive into communicating their data more effectively. So it's all about putting it out there and trying to communicate it the right way and hoping that customers are willing to listen. A lot of the learnings from our design reviews with customers during the pandemic informed the work of my team at Mapbox and helped highlight some ways Mapbox Studio could help more novice users create more accurate, informed data visualizations. When the pandemic hit the US in March and April, we were in the early stages of working on a very relevant product we happen to be launching in private beta next week. The data visualization component offers a simpler way to make choropleth and data-driven circles visualizations in Mapbox Studio with your custom data. It smart styles your data automatically and provides convenient controls right there in the component interface, including 19 colorblind-friendly palettes in Studio. This particular visualization is showing change in average annual temperature in Fahrenheit from 1895 to 2019 per county. The data visualization component will launch next Monday in private beta with these two components, choropleth and data-driven circles, with about 5 more in the works. We're actively in development on this work right now and are looking for feedback. So if anyone is interested in beta testing and would like to join, please DM me in the NACIS Slack or drop me an email. We'll share our contact information here in a minute, but we would love some cartographer perspectives on how this might help your work. But yeah, it's hot off the press coming out on Monday. To wrap up, we wanted to share some of the outcomes from this work at Mapbox. The blog post I discussed in some detail is listed here. A number of external organizations have adopted our best practices internally. Our internal disaster response score at Mapbox now includes design consultations and best practices. And this work, as I mentioned, has really informed this data visualization component, which we think will really revolutionize how people create data visualizations in Mapbox. And finally, to end on a positive note, Megan.
Yeah, so today we shared just one aspect of how we as a company dealt with this pandemic, but throughout the pandemic, there have been various stages of map making and different needs. And I'm happy to share what that looked like. It's definitely something that we saw patterns and have recorded within the company, but we thought we'd leave you with one of our favorites. In case there is another shortage, you can always use the TP Finder, which was one of the many maps that we found on our doorstep. So thank you all so much, and happy to take some questions in the chat.
Thanks so much, y'all. That is a very handy tool. And Megan and Kelsey, we really appreciate your time.